Before I begin, the mayor said, standing at the mic, I want to personally thank the woman who made this entire event possible. He looked out at the crowd and said, Evelyn Morgan, the woman who approved this plaza, protected it from demolition, and signed every permit that made this wedding happen. People turned. Some whispered. One of the bride's cousins leaned over and said, Wait, her. And there I was sitting near the bushes on a folding chair. I stood up, gave a small nod, and sat back down. They called me a +1, but the city called me by name. If you've ever been treated like an afterthought when you knew you had value, this story is for you. Subscribe and let's walk through it together. Let me take you back to earlier that day. I arrived a little early to help Jordan, my godson. I've known him since he was born. His mom, my sister, passed away when he was in middle school. Since then, I've been the one who's shown up. Birthdays, graduation, every hard day in between. The wedding was held in a public garden downtown. It was beautiful, trees lining both sides, brick paths, benches tucked under string lights. I knew it better than anyone because I helped design it. 15 years ago, that space was set to be torn down and turned into a parking structure. I fought to protect it. I was part of every meeting. I reviewed every change order. I'm the reason that space is still standing. But today I wasn't city staff. I wasn't a speaker. I was just someone Jordan brought. And people treated me like I was extra. At the welcome table, a young woman with shiny nails looked at me with a blank face. You're with Jordan, she asked. I'm his godmother, I said. She looked back down. We didn't have you on the seating chart. You can grab a chair from the back. There's room behind the reserved section. I nodded, thanked her softly, and walked toward the edge of the garden. There was a row of folding chairs set up near a service tent. I picked one up and placed it beside a tree with a clear view of the ceremony space. As I sat down and folded my coat over my lap, I noticed someone glance my way. She must have brought her own seat, a woman said, not even trying to whisper. Another voice, probably a +1. Jordan always brings someone odd. I didn't look up. I've lived long enough to know when I'm being talked about. Still, as I sat there, something settled in my chest. This was the first time I'd come to an event here, not as a planner, but as a person. That meant something to me. I looked out at the archway, the lights, the trees I helped preserve, and let myself take it in. Jordan found me a few minutes later. He crouched down beside me like he used to when he was little. I'm so sorry, he said. They said you'd have a real seat. I smiled. Don't worry about it. I'm just happy to be here. You sure I am. This is the first time I've come back to this plaza since the final build. It's holding up well. He looked at the garden, then back at me. You built this place, he whispered. You should be up there, not in the back. I didn't answer right away, just reached out and held his hand for a second. He looked like he wanted to say more, but then the music started. The bride was walking down the aisle. She looked lovely, veiled, trailing bouquet of white roses. She stood under an arch covered in flowers, the same arch I once signed off on as part of a historic restoration plan. The guests watched her with awe, and I sat quietly in a folding chair coat in my lap. They didn't know what I'd done for that space, what I gave to make it possible, but they would. Have you ever been misjudged at a moment that mattered? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. After the ceremony ended, I stayed in my folding chair as people drifted toward the reception tent. No one asked me to move. No one really looked my way, which in a strange way was fine. I've learned over the years that being invisible has its uses. Jordan came by again holding 2 glasses of punch. He handed me one, then sat cross-legged in the grass next to me, still in his tie and boutonniere. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there sipping, watching the lights flicker under the trees. You know, he finally said, this place really does look like something out of a movie. It took a lot of real life to get it here, I said. Then I smiled. But yes, it's beautiful. We sat in silence for a bit, listening to the string quartet pack up, and the laughter drifting from the tent. That's when my mind wandered back, as it often does when I see something that looks finished, because finished things don't come out of nowhere. They come from fights people never see. 15 years ago, this plaza was an overgrown, trash-littered lot. There were broken benches, cracked pavement, and plans to turn the whole thing into a 6-story parking structure with hourly rates. The city said we didn't have funds to restore it. The developers said no one would use a green space downtown. The papers didn't care, but I did. It started with a single report I filed about root damage to the old oak near the north wall. That report got me 2 meetings. Those meetings led to a motion. The motion stalled, then passed, then died, then came back. 2 years later, we finally secured restoration status, but the money still wasn't there. So I built the budget myself, line by line, and stood in front of city council with a slideshow and a quote from my sister taped to the back of my notes: "Make space for people to breathe." She loved this park before it ever had a name. We used to come here when we were younger, before the benches cracked and the grass died. She brought Jordan here when he was little, and they'd sit under the tree with sandwiches and juice boxes. After she passed, I made sure this place would stay. Even if it wasn't named after her, I still knew who it belonged to. "Hey," Jordan said gently, nudging my knee. "Where'd you go just now?" I looked at him, nowhere. "Just thinking about how far this place has come." He smiled. "Because of you." I didn't say anything, but I did let myself look around. The archway the couple had stood under, I lobbied to have it declared historic, so it couldn't be removed during remodeling. The curved brick path, I personally fought to have it widened, so it would be ADA compliant without cutting down the dogwoods. Even the lights hanging in the trees, I argued for those to be solar-powered and city-maintained. I never asked for a plaque. I never wanted my name on anything. That's not why I did it. But sitting there on that folding chair behind the crowd, watching other people enjoy something I spent years protecting, I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting just a little. A few minutes later, I stood up to stretch my legs. The sun was starting to drop, casting soft gold light across the garden. I walked slowly along the path, careful not to disrupt the cocktail tables or the photographers moving around with their lenses and ladders. Near the floral arch, a woman in a green satin dress stopped me. She looked puzzled. "Excuse me," she said, "do you work here?" I smiled gently. "No, just visiting." "Oh," she said, looking vaguely embarrassed. "Sorry, you just looked like maybe." "Venue staff?" I nodded. Understandable. I could have told her I approved the entire structural plan for the plaza, that I'd written the ordinance that allowed this kind of event here, that every inch of this space was something I helped to protect, build, or budget. But instead, I just gave her a polite smile and stepped aside. Back near the tree, I noticed 2 of the city's event staff setting up sound equipment for the speeches. I recognized one of them, Marla, from our operations team. She caught my eye, paused, and gave me a small nod. The kind of nod you give someone when you know exactly who they are, even if no one else does. I nodded back. A few feet away, the bride's family was doing formal photos. They posed in their pastel dresses and tailored suits, while a photographer barked orders. Closer together, chin down, hands soft. Dad, smile like you mean it. Someone from the catering team asked me to move for the shot. I stepped aside. Of course. Then I noticed the photographer pointing toward the curved walkway and saying, "Let's get one in front of the path. That backdrop is everything." Yes, I thought so too. Later, as the speeches were being organized, I heard a whisper behind me, one of the bride's cousins. "Is she still sitting back there? She's not part of the family, Jordan's friend or something." They weren't being cruel, just careless. But sometimes that's worse. I sat back down and watched the lanterns blink on one by one as dusk settled in. The garden looked lovely in low light. The air was cool now, the breeze picking up a little. I rested my hands in my lap and thought, they don't know me, but they know this place, and maybe that's enough. It was about an hour into the reception when the shift really started to show. People had eaten, wine was flowing. The band had started playing a soft jazz set under the lanterns. A few kids ran barefoot across the edge of the garden, while someone took Polaroids near the old fountain. That's when I noticed how easily the social lines were drawn. There was the bride's family clustered under the tent in pastel dresses and matching shoes, laughing in the kind of circle you don't walk into unless you're invited. Then there was the groom's side, more casual, more relaxed, but still organized in their own way. And then there was me, still in my folding chair under the tree, holding a paper cup of punch, and trying not to be in anyone's way. I'd been to events like this before. You don't have to be told you're an outsider, you feel it. 2 bridesmaids walked past me with empty glasses and full plates. One of them slowed, gave me a quick glance, and said, "Could you let the photographer through, please?" I stepped aside. She didn't say thank you. A few minutes later, a cousin walked by, carrying a gift bag. She gave me a polite smile and said, "The food was amazing, wasn't it? I just love how the staff dresses up to match the theme." Then she kept walking. I didn't respond. I wasn't wearing anything close to staff attire, just a navy skirt suit and a soft floral scarf. But I guess to her, I wasn't dressed brideside either. It didn't bother me, not really. I've learned not to waste energy correcting people who've already made up their minds. Jordan came over again this time with a plate of finger food. "You haven't eaten," he said, setting it down gently beside me. "I'm fine," I told him. "Really?" He sat on the edge of the nearby planter, balancing his glass. "I hate this," he said quietly. "You shouldn't be treated like this. I'm not here for them," I said. Still, he shook his head. "They think you're nobody. They think I'm background," I corrected. "There's a difference." That was when my phone buzzed in my purse. I checked it briefly. It was a message from a city assistant. "FYI, Mayor confirmed for short remarks around 6:30. Wants to greet you personally." I didn't smile, but I did tuck the phone back into my bag a little slower. It's strange being erased in a space you built, especially when someone with power still remembers your name. Across the lawn, the bride was posing near the rose wall with her parents. The photographer shouted for everyone to move aside, and a group of young guests accidentally pushed past me. One caught my arm to steady himself. "Sorry, ma'am," he said quickly. "Didn't see you there." I nodded. "That's all right." Then someone asked, "Who's that woman by the bushes?" A shrug. No clue. Jordan's +1 or something. I didn't flinch. But inside, I felt it. That familiar heat in your chest when you're talked about like furniture, something people forget was ever placed there on purpose. The plaza lights kicked on just after that, one by one, the string bulbs, the embedded path lights, even the motion sensors I had insisted on during construction to save energy. The whole garden glowed like it was wrapped in amber. The photographer exclaimed, "God, I love this space. This lighting is unreal." Another groomsman added, "Honestly, best venue I've seen in a long time." The bride's aunt chimed in and they said getting a permit was so hard. They were lucky someone fast-tracked it. I tilted my head slightly, listening. Fast-tracked. It had taken me 7 months of meetings paperwork and a signed environmental impact report to push this event through the city. There was nothing fast about it. But that's the thing, no one sees the work under the surface. They only admire what sparkles. Later, I took a slow walk around the edge of the tent just to stretch my legs. That's when I overheard something near the buffet. 2 older women from the bride's family were standing near the shrimp platter, chatting with drinks in hand. "She's what, like a distant cousin? I don't know. One of Jordan's old professors, maybe." She didn't clap during the toast. Some people just don't have social awareness. I didn't stop walking. I just kept going all the way back to my folding chair, where I sat again in the soft light, letting their words hang in the air behind me like fog. I'd been called worse, ignored more thoroughly. This was nothing new. But for some reason, it still tugged at the same place in me that remembered every late-night zoning appeal, every denied grant request, every public comment hearing where I stood alone. This plaza didn't exist because someone waved a wand. It existed because someone showed up again and again when it didn't seem worth it. And that someone was me. Jordan came back around just before the speeches were to begin. He crouched beside me again and handed me a linen napkin, one of the nice ones from the main tables. "I swiped this for you," he said with a small grin. I chuckled. "Thanks. What a rebel." He looked at me more seriously. "You doing okay?" I nodded. "They don't know who I am." He tilted his head. "Do you want them to?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. I didn't want credit. I didn't want attention. I just didn't want to be invisible. The first signs of trouble started just as the speeches were about to begin. Guests were finishing their meals, leaning back in their chairs with drinks in hand, laughing under the lights. A few children chased bubbles along the edge of the lawn, while a violinist softly warmed up for the next song. Everything looked perfect on the surface, but I noticed the ripple before anyone said a word. 2 of the venue staff were speaking behind the tent, their faces tight, their voices low. One of them held a phone angled slightly toward the other as if reading something urgent. Then a third person, someone I recognized from city logistics, hurried over, pointing toward the main road behind the plaza. That was when I knew. You do not spend 3 decades in city planning without developing a sense for tension. It has a rhythm to it. You can hear it before you know the details. Jordan returned just then with 2 small plates of cake. He handed me one and sat beside me cross-legged near the stone planter again. "Red velvet or lemon?" he asked, already knowing my answer. I took the red velvet. "Thank you." He looked toward the tent. Something's going on over there. One of the staff looked panicked. I followed his eyes. You think it's traffic? Maybe he said. Or security. I heard one of them say something about people gathering on the east side. My phone buzzed in my bag. I glanced down and read the message. City Operations Urgent March redirected from South Main toward Rose Plaza. Requesting event-level override for temporary foot traffic control. Confirm if closure permitted. Please respond. I stood up slowly and brushed off my skirt. I need to make a call, I told Jordan. I walked behind the vendor tents to where the generators were set up and pulled out my phone. I dialed directly into Operations Dispatch and kept my voice steady. This is Evelyn Morgan. I am authorizing a soft street closure on the east side of Rose Plaza. Redirect foot traffic down Hawthorne Avenue. Immediate need due to an active wedding event in progress attended by public officials. Please confirm personnel en route. There was a pause. Confirm, the dispatcher said. Barriers in motion, police support notified. I hung up, let out a long breath, and returned to the tent just as the first group of protesters passed by at a distance. They never even reached the venue, redirected smoothly. No shouting, no interference. Not a single guest had any idea how close the evening came to being disrupted, except one. Marla, one of the event coordinators from the city, caught my eye. She gave a single quiet nod. That was enough. Jordan glanced at me as I sat back down. Everything okay? All fine now, I said. He studied me. You handled it, didn't you? I did not answer, but he knew. Across the plaza, the bride's father had just been informed. I could tell by the way he waved a staff member over and pointed toward the gate. There was almost a protest, I heard him say. Why were we not told sooner? What if it had interrupted the mayor's speech? The woman replied calmly. It was handled before it became an issue. Someone here authorized a reroute. Who, he asked. But she did not point at me. She just shrugged. That was fine. The speeches began as the last of the daylight faded from the sky. The string lights above clicked on automatically, casting the garden in a warm amber glow. It looked like something out of a magazine, the archway, the soft breeze, the bride glowing beside her groom. Picture perfect. The bride's mother took the microphone first. She gave a smooth, polished toast about love and family and how lucky they were to find the perfect space for such a beautiful evening. She thanked the florist, the DJ, the caterers, the photographers, the guests. But not the woman who made the plaza legally available. I expected that. Then the bride's uncle took the mic. He was loud and animated, the kind of man who could tell a story and get a laugh from every table. He thanked the city for clearing a path for the permit so fast, and joked, "It's a miracle anything got approved around here. You know how that goes?" Laughter rippled through the tent. I just sat still and watched. They had no idea it was not fast. That it had taken me almost a year to get the zoning language rewritten. That the environmental report nearly blocked it altogether. That I had personally signed the permit that let them use the space on a spring weekend at full capacity with temporary power allowances and extended sound ordinances. But none of that mattered now. I leaned back in my folding chair. It creaked a little under me, the only sound in my small corner of the garden. Jordan was still beside me. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm good." He looked toward the arch. "This place doesn't just look beautiful, it feels peaceful." "It should," I said. "It cost a lot of peace to get here." He nodded, but I could tell he did not fully understand. Not yet. Just then, another staff member stepped into the tent from the side entrance and made her way to the microphone. She whispered something to the DJ. The music paused. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "we have a special guest joining us for a brief word." The mayor had arrived. He was dressed modestly in a charcoal suit, standing tall but unassuming as he shook hands and approached the podium. Marla was standing near him. I saw her lean and whisper something. He nodded. Then he looked out across the crowd and found me. He smiled. Not a showy grin, just recognition. A knowing look. Then he took the mic. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap, listening. I knew what was coming. The mayor adjusted the microphone, glanced at his notes, and smiled. "Good evening, everyone. I promise to keep this short." The crowd chuckled politely. People shifted in their chairs. Some raised their glasses. Most of them were just expecting a standard civic congratulations, maybe a generic thank you to the couple for bringing beauty to the city, or something equally forgettable. But that is not what happened. The mayor looked down once, then back up at the guests. I am honored to join you tonight to celebrate this beautiful occasion in one of the city's most beloved public spaces. Rose Plaza is a gem, and like most good things in our city, it did not happen by accident. I felt my heart stop, not in fear, but in a quiet, sharp awareness. He went on, "Before I continue, I want to take a moment to recognize the person responsible for making this very gathering possible. This space, the very permit that allowed this event, the lights, the sound, the structural safety, the preservation of the trees, the very existence of the garden, you are enjoying all of it because one woman fought to protect it." Now people were sitting up straighter. Whispers started spreading. The mayor turned slightly, looked directly at me, and said, "Miss Evelyn Morgan, the head of city planning. She approved this plaza, she preserved it, and she made tonight possible." There was a hush, a full stunned silence. Somewhere near the bar, someone actually dropped a fork. I stood, not because I wanted to, but because I felt the moment asking me to. Jordan rose beside me, and suddenly the people who had whispered, who had misjudged, were staring. Not at the folding chair, not at the scarf, at me. I nodded once, no smile. Just a stillness that came from years of knowing my worth, even when no one else did. The mayor gave a soft clap. Others followed slowly at first, then fully. Some guests even stood. I caught a glimpse of the bride's mother. Her face had gone blank, like she had been hit by a breeze she did not see coming. One of her sisters leaned over and whispered something, then turned and looked at me with something between confusion and embarrassment. I sat back down. Jordan sat with me. "You okay?" he asked. "I am now," I said. The mayor finished his remarks and returned to the tent's edge, chatting with a few council members who had arrived with him. I noticed Marla step back, giving him space. She caught my eye again and gave the smallest smile. And that was when the ripple truly began. Guests began approaching me, not all at once, but gradually, as if testing the current. A woman in a pale blue dress came over first. "I'm so sorry," she said, brushing imaginary crumbs from her napkin. "I had no idea. You've done incredible work." "Thank you," I said. I was glad to do it. Then came a young man with a program still folded in his pocket. "Miss Morgan, I'm actually studying urban design. Do you mind if I ask about your permit process?" I told him it was long. Worth it, but long. Two bridesmaids hovered nearby, no longer sure how to act. One of them said quietly, "We didn't mean to. We thought you were part of the venue." "I understand," I said. And I did. The bride's mother finally walked over, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I want to apologize," she said. "We didn't recognize you." I looked at her carefully. "No, you didn't." She nodded. "But thank you for everything. You're welcome. I hope the evening has been what you dreamed." She blinked as if surprised I had not said more. Then she simply nodded and stepped away. That was enough. I turned back toward Jordan, who was still watching me like I was something new. "That speech was perfect," he said. "You didn't have to say a word." "No," I said. "The work said it for me." We sat there for a long time, just breathing in the air, under the trees I had once stood up to save. I watched people walking paths I fought to reroute. I saw kids dancing under lanterns that almost did not get approved due to a power budget revision. All of it, the joy, the celebration, the beauty, it existed because I refused to give up. Because I believed public space mattered. Because I showed up even when no one thanked me, especially then. And for once tonight they saw it. Not because I demanded recognition, but because the city remembered, and reminded everyone else. After the mayor's speech, the air around me changed. Not loudly, not all at once, but it changed. The guests who had looked past me earlier were now seeing me. Some of them nodded as they walked by. A few smiled with soft, cautious warmth, the way people do when they realize they may have made a mistake, but are not quite sure how to undo it. I did not move from my seat. I stayed right there on my folding chair, coat still across my lap, watching them adjust themselves, not because I asked them to, but because truth has a way of standing quietly in a room until it is undeniable. Jordan had not left my side since the mayor spoke. He kept glancing over at me like he was still processing what had just happened. "You know," he finally said, "I kept waiting for a moment where I'd have to defend you. I thought maybe someone would say something stupid, and I'd get to stand up for you." I looked at him and smiled. "You did not need to defend me. You brought me here. That was enough." A woman in a coral dress approached next. She looked familiar, someone from the bride's side, maybe a cousin or a friend from college. Her heels clicked nervously against the brick path as she stopped a few feet away. I just wanted to say thank you, she said, not quite meeting my eyes, for everything you did to save this place. We had no idea. That is all right, I said. You were not supposed to. She nodded, looked around like she was trying to find her escape, then walked back toward the bar. The truth is, I had no desire to shame anyone. I did not want a spotlight. I did not want long apologies or flattery. I just wanted people to remember that real things, important things, are often built by people who get no credit at all, and that sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the quiet ones. The caterer came by with a tray of sparkling water. He leaned down and said, "Ma'am, would you like to move to one of the reserved tables? We can open a spot for you near the head table." I looked at him kindly. "Thank you, but I am just fine here." He looked puzzled but nodded and moved on. Moments later, the bride's father walked toward me. His hands were in his pockets, and he wore the expression of a man trying to be gracious after getting caught looking in the wrong direction. "Miss Morgan," he said, clearing his throat, "I wanted to thank you for what you did. This venue, we could not have asked for better." I stood. I did not do it for him, but I stood because it felt right. "I am glad it's brought your family joy," I said. "It has, truly. I hope we did it justice." I smiled. "You celebrated. That is all a public space needs." He reached out and shook my hand. It was brief, slightly awkward, but genuine. The speeches wrapped up soon after, and the dancing began. The music swelled under the canopy of trees, and for the first time all evening, I let myself relax. I watched the bride dance with her father, the groom lift a small niece into his arms and spin her gently around. People laughing barefoot, the garden lights reflecting off glasses raised high. It was everything I had imagined it could be back when it was just a rough sketch on a grant proposal with 2 signatures and a paragraph of dreams. Jordan nudged me. "Do you want to dance? I am not much of a dancer." "You are tonight," he said. He offered his hand. I took it. He led me to the edge of the floor, and we swayed to a slow jazz tune under the lights. A few people looked over, a few smiled. It was not a spectacle. It was quiet, meaningful, and just enough. Afterward, I returned to my chair and noticed something folded and resting on the seat. A linen napkin from the main tables. Not the paper kind from the side stations, but one of the good ones, carefully folded, placed with intention. I looked around, but no one claimed it. Just a small gesture. Someone saying without saying, "You belonged here all along." Later that evening, as the sky turned dark and the music softened, the bride came over. She looked tired but happy, her dress slightly grass-stained at the hem. "I wanted to say thank you," she said. "For what? For this? For the plaza? For being here? For not walking away when we were rude?" I nodded. "You were not rude. You were busy being celebrated. It happens." She looked down, almost ashamed. "We should have known." "No," I said gently. "You saw what you were told to see. A quiet woman at the edge of the party. That is all right." She hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged me. It was brief, but it was real. And that is what mattered. I left shortly after. Jordan offered to drive me, but I told him I wanted to walk a little. It felt right to leave the garden slowly on my own 2 feet one last time. As I reached the main gate, I paused and turned around. The garden was glowing, full, alive, and for once I did not feel erased. I felt known. Not because I raised my voice, but because I never needed to. 1 week after the wedding, I returned to work as usual. My office was quiet. It always is on Monday mornings, and I like it that way. I unlock the door, flip the light switch, and let the quiet settle before I sit down with my coffee. That morning, though, something was waiting on my desk. A large manila envelope. No return address. I opened it slowly. Inside was a framed photograph from the wedding taken just after the mayor's speech. I was standing. Jordan was beside me. The guests were clapping faces lit by soft garden lights. In the corner of the frame, someone had printed a simple line in neat script. "For the one who built the foundation quietly." I stared at it for a long time. Underneath the frame was a handwritten note unsigned. "Thank you for showing us what it means to build without needing praise. You reminded us that real things don't need to be loud to last." I did not cry, but I did sit very still, holding the weight of that moment like something sacred. I hung the photo on my wall, right beside the original permit copy for Rose Plaza. The one I signed in black ink 3 years ago on a Wednesday afternoon after 8 rounds of revisions. I placed it there not for recognition, but for balance. The vision and the outcome. The quiet fight and the quiet result. That afternoon, Jordan stopped by the office. He brought me a sandwich, as he often does when he's in the neighborhood. "You got the photo?" he asked, glancing at the wall. "I did. It's a good one," he said. We ate in silence for a while. He sipped from his iced tea. I watched a sunbeam move across the carpet. After a while, he leaned back and said, "You know, I think about that day a lot. About how no one knew who you were." I smiled. "That is all right. I do not think it is," he said. "But I guess what mattered was that you stayed." "I stayed," I said, "because I had been there all along." He nodded, then added, "I told a few people after. Friends, colleagues. They were amazed you did not correct anyone." "Why would I?" He looked at me and said, "Because most people would have." I shrugged. "Most people are not tired." He laughed softly. "Fair enough." As he was getting ready to leave, he paused in the doorway. "Hey, can I ask something?" "Of course." "That folding chair you never moved, even when they offered you a better seat." Why, I thought about it for a moment, then said, "Because they only offered it once they thought I mattered. And if my work had not been acknowledged, they would have left me in the back. I stayed where I started because the value of what I built did not change just because someone noticed it." He smiled like he was going to remember that for a long time. I did not go to any other events at Rose Plaza that season. I wanted to leave that evening intact without layering over it. But a few months later, I stopped by during a Saturday market. The garden was full of families' kids running through the path, dogs on leashes, music in the background. The lights still hung in the trees. A city volunteer handed me a flyer and said, "We love this place. It is the heart of downtown." I nodded. She asked, "Have you been here before?" I said yes, once. I sat on one of the stone benches near the rose wall and watched a young couple take engagement photos in front of the arch. I smiled quietly. The plaza had become what I hoped it would. A place for joy, for gathering, for life. I did not need to be part of every moment that happened there. I just needed to know that people had the space to make those moments happen. Later that day, as I walked back toward my car, I passed the small brass plaque near the main entrance. It was the only formal marker in the plaza placed during its reopening. It did not carry my name. It never did. It simply read, "Preserved by those who believed it mattered." That was enough. A few weeks later, Jordan sent me a text. He was at another wedding in a different venue, and he wrote "Nice place." But no Evelyn Morgan signature on this one. I laughed when I read it. Not out loud, just a small, full-body smile. Because I knew what he meant. Some places carry more than a name. They carry the weight of intention. The echo of someone who insisted it mattered. That someone built it, protected it, stood for it. Even when no one noticed. That is what I did. They called me a +1. But I was the one who signed the permit. I signed the path they walked on. The arch they stood under, the rule that let them dance past 10 o'clock, the ordinance that protected the trees, the plan that gave them shade and sky and light. I signed all of it, even the folding chair. If this story moved you, please share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more quiet stories that remind us what dignity really looks like.